Chinese vehicle brands are changing South Africa's motor industry faster than most people realize. This isn't just about cheaper cars. It's about pricing pressure, consumer trust, after-sales service, and whether local and legacy brands can adapt or get left behind. This Thursday, on the Vision 2026 talk show, I'm joined by industry experts who live this reality every day. Freddie Franken, Gary McCraw, Brandon Cohen. We'll unpack who's really winning, what buyers now expect, and what will decide which brands survive the next decade. 45 minutes. Live. No fluff. Join the experts. Help shape the conversation.
Greetings, another Thursday morning. Welcome to our listeners and welcome to our special guests. Today we've got Freddie Franklin, we've got Brandon Cohen, and we've got Kevin McCraw, who's going to be joining us today. They're going to be talking about something that's really affecting our economy today, and that is the influx of Chinese vehicles into South Africa. They are cheap, they are fantastic, they have all the bells and whistles, and people are flooding to buy them. What is this going to do to the legacy brands that we have? The Toyotas, the Mercedes-Benzes, the BMWs, all those fantastic brands that we've trusted for so many years, that our grandparents bought, that our parents bought, and that we are buying or have bought. So we're going to be discussing this today. But before we go there, I'd just like to say, we are Vision 2026, and if you haven't subscribed or followed us on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, please do that now, because we bring and give expertise a voice, and that's what we're here to do. So please join us and follow us, and please participate in the conversation. If there are any questions you have, please put them onto the comment section wherever you are, on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, and we'll attempt to answer those a little bit later in the show. Great, so let's introduce our co-hosts. We have a number of co-hosts, and the idea behind our co-hosts is that each one of them is here to tell us a little bit about not only themselves, but give their perspective of what, from their point of view, of the issue that we're discussing. So we've got Mana Ruetz. Welcome, Mana. Mana is a successful business person in the insurance game. And Mana, please introduce yourself.
Okay, yes, good morning, everybody. I own a company called Inscorp Insurance Brokers for the last 14 years. And I work basically with risk for a living, which means I spend most of my time helping my clients navigate and helping their businesses through planning for something that might happen in the future. Today, I'm wearing two hats. One is the one for the businesswoman, and then also I'm a consumer who bought a Chinese car not so long ago. It was, I think, September last year, around there. So yeah, I can't wait to see how much trouble I'm in for buying Chinese. Looking forward to hearing what you guys are saying today.
Thank you, Mana. Welcome. And then we have Russell. Russell's a sales guru, and he comes from a sales point of view, and he'll be asking pertinent questions around sales. Russell, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi. Morning. Thank you, David, and welcome to the guests. As David was saying, I focus on sales. OrbSpec is actually focusing on three elements: business development, reputation management, and this is why I'm quite keen to hear exactly what we're talking about today with the Chinese influx of product, specifically in the motor space now. And I do sales training. I'm one of the few people that believe salespeople aren't born, but they can be trained to be good salespeople. And that's the feather in my hat. I do have 15 years experience in the motor industry, where I started, although it was in the underfitment category, but the motor industry is a lot similar no matter what part of the motor vehicle you're selling, whether it's a vehicle itself or products associated. So it's going to take me back a couple of years, about 17 years, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Russell. Great to have you here. Let's go to Wilhelm. Wilhelm's our team's expert. He makes sure that your teams actually work together. And welcome, Wilhelm. He's actually on a wine farm down in the Cape. Some of us have wonderful lives. But please introduce yourself, Wilhelm. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, David. This is great to be here, and I'm excited to hear more about the panel and about the cars, and I'm also a consumer. I help companies identify whether their culture, leadership, and energy systems are ready for growth before growth exposes costly weaknesses. You know, most companies try to scale their systems. I help them scale humans because humans run the systems. So fix the human system before you scale your business system. That is what I do. And thank you for this great opportunity to be here.
Welcome, Wilhelm. Great to have you here. Glenn, morning to you. It's so good to have you here. Glenn's our planning expert. He's the project manager, and he makes sure that we actually get and do the things that we say we're going to do. Well, please introduce yourself, Glenn.
Thank you, David. Great to be on board again, and welcome to the guests. Yes, I do life and business coaching. I do counseling, mentoring. I actually just prefer to call myself your personal locksmith, simply because I love to unlock that potential inside of people and in businesses. So that's what I do. Looking really forward to this today. Thank you. Take it over.
Fantastic, Glenn. Great to have you. Well, now let's go to our special guests for today. And a little while ago, I met with Freddie, and we were talking, and we had a discussion about, the Chinese vehicles coming into South Africa, and I've been looking at also buying a Chinese car. I was a BMW fan for many, many years, and then I went to Land Rover, and then I went to have a Ford. no oil on the tarmac, but anyway, and now we're looking at Chinese, and we had this discussion, and Freddie said, let's have a discussion on Vision 2026 about the impact of Chinese cars in South Africa. So Freddie's actually assembled the team. Fantastic, Freddie. Thanks for doing that. So Freddie, please introduce yourself and please introduce your team. I see Gary's, Brandon's not here, but I'm sure he'll join us shortly.
Morning, everyone. Morning to our audience as well. I'm sure that they're also eager to hear what we're going to say. And thank you, David. Yes, it's great to have you and your co-hosts on the session. I think Brandon's just got some connectivity problems. My background, I'm the co-owner of Past Competence, where we specialize in dealer development, whether it's through software solutions or training and development interventions. So we very much in the cold phase, we understand what's going on in the actual retail industry. And I've been involved for over 25 years. Now, while we wait for Braden, I would like to introduce Gary McCraw. Now, Gary myself goes back many, many years. Gary used to be, before retirement, so-called retirement, Gary. He was the director under the Retail Motor Industry Organization at NADA. So NADA stands for the National Automotive Dealer Association, which is the body that actually represents the entire dealer network in the industry, which includes obviously manufacturing, I would imagine, Gary. So if you can maybe just just introduce yourself and give us more detail, please.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, my background is that I've been in the automotive industry for the past 40 years. I have worked with the Retail Motor Industry Organization for that time in various roles. When I retired at the end of August 2024, I was the director of the National Automobile Dealers Association, and I was also the RMI's company secretary, but I've held numerous portfolios, so I have a pretty good knowledge of what's going on in the industry at this stage.
Fantastic, Gary. Freddie, please introduce Brandon here. I'm sure he will join us shortly.
Yes, Brandon is actually the duly elected chairman of NADA. So, and which we must bear in mind that NADA represents the entire network. So he's very much at the forefront coordinating all the activities. I know that in this week, Gary and Brandon was actually down in Cape Town to meet with Parliament. And so it's very much highly interactive with the dealer network and the manufacturing side, obviously.
Sure, yeah. Well, this is going to be a very interesting discussion. And Freddie, you were talking about some stats that are, that we could maybe share with the audience, just to set the scene of, of the discussion.
Yes.
Could you share those stats with us?
Absolutely. If we look at the retail industry and we look back at 2025, we saw an year on year an increase of 15.7%, and insofar as new vehicle sales are concerned. But what we must bear in mind, in the last 6 months, we had 17 new brands, predominantly from China, that entered our market. So this increase in volumes was actually spread amongst more brands. Now, insofar as the Chinese market is concerned, they showed an increase of 74% year on year, and currently represent between 13 and 15% of the actual market. And also linked to that is your new vehicle sales. You already see that some of the Chinese brands that's been in the country for a while is now entering our used vehicle market, and they do very well on used sales. And so obviously the used vehicle market at the moment is under pressure. You look at an average profit of about 5.4% on a vehicle, especially the greatest demand is up to 360,000. So after that, you might run the risk that this vehicle is actually, the term that we use, is going to burn you. So in other words, it will age and you won't be able to retail it at the price that you had in mind. Brandon, thank you. Welcome back. If you can maybe just introduce yourself and elaborate on your role and your position, please.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Technology is great just when you need it. I've been in the industry for around 18 years. I'm currently the chairperson of NADA South Africa and the vice president of the RMI. So eat, breathe, sleep, live automotive industry, from parts to after sales to new cars, used cars, everything.
Sure. Wow, fantastic, Brendan. Thank you. All right, let's get on to our discussion, and it's going to be an open talk show here, so basically please participate. The question that I have for you gentlemen, and for Mana, thank you, is how many new vehicle brands are reshaping the competition in South Africa? In other words, how many new Chinese models are actually coming out that, for example, we used to have BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, Ford, etc., but now there are all these new entrants. Can you maybe expand on that, gentlemen?
Yeah, let me jump in. So it's a good question. We currently have passenger and commercial vehicle, roughly about 57 brands of vehicle in this country for sale. About 48 of them are for passenger. We're increasing on the Chinese. I think we're already well over 21. We're probably about 28 Chinese brands currently. And it was announced this week there's another 4 coming in before the end of February, and then there'll be further coming in March. So yeah, there is a lot of new brands, a lot of competition in a market of only 500 to 600,000 odd new car users.
And Brandon, do you think that these are actually expanding the market or maybe just redistributing the market?
I think it's a little bit of both. So the market definitely was up in 2025, but that's off a very low base. But we're hitting best levels in nearly 2 decades of sales. Whether that is a truly expanded market or that more stock is available and people are just able to buy cars is the debate. I think that we're splitting the market further and further with each new brand that comes in. I do think it cannibalizes a little bit, but that said, not any of the traditional brands have closed down yet, so there still is space.
I'd like to actually ask Mana. Mana recently bought a Chinese car, and Mana, could you maybe just explain to us and what influenced you to actually choose that brand over perhaps, I know you had a Mitsubishi before, a Japanese vehicle, but tell us a little bit why you went for that vehicle specifically and what vehicle it is.
Yeah, if you guys are looking for someone who did research on buying a car, I'm the wrong person to answer this question though. It was pretty much a spur of the moment thing. I bought my Mitsubishi about 6 years ago. Loved my car, and just one morning, my daughter and I decided we're going to go do some looking at cars, and then take one or two for a test drive. So we went down the road, and a motor was there, accessible. We could get in easy, get out easy. Looked at the car, and for me, it was I'm not a brand person, so I choose comfort and value. If it's comfortable and the value and the price is right, yes, I would go there. So I took the car for a test drive, and I fell in love with it. All the wheels, there's everything. I mean, it's got a screen, it's got a I can park properly because I can see the video, and yeah, it's all those Wilson. What is the word? Bells and whistles that worked for me at the time, and it's comfortable. It's really a comfortable car, and the price was right.
Cool. Freddie, maybe I see you. What would you like to answer to that?
It's quite interesting what Mona is saying. And obviously that's the mere fact, if you look at price and you look at all the bells and whistles, as you put it, then that drives you must remember, it's all about perceived value from the consumer. And you rightfully said, but it fit my purpose, what I was actually looking for. It had a reverse camera and so forth. And yes, and I think that's what the consumer out there is experiencing at the moment. Looking back at what Brandon has said, that I think that just our market at the moment is relatively small. We've got self-propelled vehicles that's registered of about 11.2 million, and the consumer must be a bit confused on which is the right route to go and what will in the end will be the right decision.
Sure. Well, tell me, Freddie or Brandon or Gary, from your point of view, how has the Chinese market grown? Chinese vehicle market grown in South Africa over the last 2-3 years since these new entrants have come in. I mean, I believe Chery's now, they're having remarkable sales during November. And I think now they're the 8th biggest seller of vehicles in South Africa. Maybe just expand a bit on that.
Yeah,
I think maybe the reason that the Chinese brands have expanded so greatly in South Africa and have started becoming a major player in the market is partly what Manes said, is that when consumers go out there these days, brand loyalty is not at the top of the list. They are looking for price, and I think our market is very price sensitive, and we're also looking for what you can get for the price. What are the safety features in the car? What are the other features in the car that you're looking for? So at times it also becomes a very clinical process. People go online, they compare the vehicles online. They don't just go walking from showroom to showroom, and then they very narrow it down to what they believe they want. And then they'll go into those showrooms, and then they will check the vehicles out. They will test drive it. And that's why I'm not sure exactly the percentage. I know Brandon's closer to the percentages, but I think the Chinese brands are probably sitting at about 40% of the market already, if not more, of total sales. And it's just because of that proliferation of brands that have come in. People in South Africa are really spoilt for choice. And Brandon only mentioned the number of brands, but if you start having a look at the choice in derivatives and the model choice, South Africans, I think, have got more choice than any other country around the world, and I suppose that's what's also driving it. And then the second thing is, if you're going to consider maybe buying a used vehicle and you're looking at the same price point, and you look at a Chinese brand that might be similar on a price point of a legacy brand, and you're saying, well, motor plan is gone, warranty's expired. I'd rather buy a Chinese brand that's got the warranty, got the maintenance plan, and I'm covered for the next 5 years or what so.
Brandon, your take on this?
Yeah, just to echo what Gary said, luckily the Chinese aren't 41% just yet, but their growth rate is unbelievable. We started at 2% market share pre-COVID, and now we're already running at close to about 26% market share. It's a phenomenal rise, and I think it will just grow. There will be a point where market realities will come into it, and you just can't have too many new brands, and it will come down to service, after sales, parts availability, crash parts, insurance costs, and things like that, and things will fall away. But until that point happens, the growth is astronomical. It's globally astronomical, and they are offering heavy tech at really good prices. Some say unsustainable, but the consumer is benefiting, and while the consumer benefits, I mean, we're just going to see more of this.
Mm-hmm. I actually want to ask Wilhelm. Wilhelm recently bought a second-hand car, and Wilhelm, maybe you could just give your perspective on the whole thing. I mean, did you have a look at Chinese brands at all, Wilhelm?
Yes, for sure, and it's absolutely incredible what you get. Now, I never thought about buying a new car, but as Gary said, actually, it's better to go for a new Chinese vehicle. They got all the bells and whistles, very luxurious. Now, I like I pull a caravan, tow a caravan, so I'm looking in the 2.5 range. So yes, it's incredible what you get and the luxury, and all in all, I think cars are quite expensive, and this Chinese market can help people to be able to afford a new car. So I love this, and as I had a Kia Sorento. Now it was already old, too old, 2008 model, so it was old, but it is such a nice car, and even for that old model, it was quite luxurious, and yeah, I think it's exciting to look at the market now and the new. You mentioned the fact that there's a lot of new brands that will come in even. So I think I must save a little money to buy myself a nice new Chinese car.
If you have a look at the market, would you maybe define it in two different segments? For example, those under, say, R500,000, and perhaps looking from a Chinese point of view, and then more legacy brands over R500,000. Those who actually trust, like their Toyota and their Ford, and their Discovery or their Defender, because there are a lot of those vehicles around. There are a lot of BMWs around still. What is your view on that, Freddie, Gary, Brandon?
If I can maybe just kick off, there will always be room for the legacy brands. And the reason being, the consumer got to realize that it's all about after sales. I know, and I know Brandon also touched on that. I know that the parts will be there. If my vehicle is in an accident, I know the body parts will be available. And so the legacy brands will always be there. I think at the moment, it's actually a battle for market share between all the different brands, including the Chinese. So, the old saying of "he who owns the market dictates." That's actually why we see dealerships selling vehicles on very low margins, because we need to increase the market share. I don't know, what's your take, Brandon?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're spot on with that. Everyone is fighting for their little piece of the world. I think if you look at the vehicles, South Africans are definitely under financial pressure. So we see statistically that the under 400,000 Rand is where most of the market plays right now, the vast majority, and that's where the Chinese sit. But even over the 500,000 Rand mark, the legacy brands are definitely still there. I saw in the news yesterday, BMW has increased their market share of Lux brands to 41% of Lux brand sales. So that's there. But the Chinese are now coming in with the BYDs, and that's not for price sensitivity. Those cars are 900,000 over R1 million if you want the Shark or the Sea Line. So it's coming, but the traditional brands will still be there. The market shares is exactly right, is exactly what Freddie said. If you look at all the brands really in the market in 2025, every single one of the traditional brands lost share. Even Toyota, they lost the biggest share, even though they're still number one. But, it's not all doom and gloom. The Chinese brands haven't taken away from everybody. The Korean brands and a lot of other brands gained market share last year, right across the board. So it's a constant rejigging of it. And it's just more choice creates more competition. Those who offer the better service with the better pricing, people are researching online. The chatbots like Grok or GPT or whatever, they're going to rank the cars, and they're going to put the Chinese cars with the traditional cars, and people will make their own decisions from there. And long may that kind of competition last.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think David, just following on from what Brandon said, as you said Freddie said in the intro, we were at Parliament presenting to the Trade and Industry and Competition Portfolio Committee around the South African Automotive Master Plan. And again, this is a policy document. And if we look at that, most of the stuff that was previously put in, the targets haven't been set. So government and that are currently with industry looking at that plan to decide whether the plan needs to be adapted. I know there was quite a lot of negative comment around Chinese vehicles coming in. I know the unions during that session, nothing was confidential because it was aired already on YouTube live while we were there, so it's public. We're very unhappy about that because they believe that it was impacting on jobs within the manufacturing sector. So we're going to have to wait and see what comes out around that look at the master plan. Whether that means it's going to be changes in tariffs and excise duties and all those type of things, we're not sure. We sincerely hope it won't, and that the market will continue to be open for competition. But I don't think at this point in time we're going to see any of the major legacy brands exiting South Africa, and it boils down to volume. And I think, if anything, what South Africa needs is to grow its economy, needs GDP to grow. And if we can get a GDP that grows between 5 and 6%, the passenger market and the commercial market will grow. And that will give more space for everybody, Chinese brands, Korean brands, wherever they come from, locally manufactured brands in South Africa. That's what we need. And that will then make vehicles more affordable for the public.
Gary, above our borders, we've got a huge market out there. What is the possibility of us actually, South African companies in the motor industry actually, getting into those different markets, in Namibia, in Zambia?
David, that's a very good question. I think you were sitting in Parliament on Monday. It was one of the questions that was raised during Parliament, and I think it's one of the areas that hasn't been leveraged by the South African government or the local industry, and I think it's something that needs to be looked at, because that is the market. Just across your borders, your logistics to get the vehicles there is short. It's not like trying to get all your vehicles to Europe, whereas currently all our vehicle exports from the local manufacturers, the biggest percentage is going to Europe. And if you could, open a new market to the bottom part of Africa, even the middle part of Africa, I think that would help significantly in terms of the volumes being manufactured in South Africa and sold.
Sorry, just to jump in. The only problem with the African market, and Gary's right, that is the growth, that is our future. That is, we have young people growing up tech savvy. It's wonderful. The problem is across the continent, they need to do what South Africa did many, many years ago, and that is to stop the old imports coming in from Japan, imported used cars. The whole of Africa is flooded with frustrated stock, and it's very cheap. It's old stuff, and that is the vast majority of cars on the continent. And if they can stop those cars coming in, you open up a market. Because right now, why buy a new car when you can get a 10-year-old Japanese car for equivalent of 10,000 Rand? And that is what has to stop, from safety, from everything. And then we will massively and very, very quickly grow the African market.
Well, that's a very good point, Brandon. But the question is, how do we stop it? Is there methods to do that?
Well, we've learned in South Africa, we've done it. There's got to be political will. You've got to stop it at port. You've got to bring in the laws. And the best thing, and it's a horrible word, tariffs, is you do what South Africa does, 200%, 300% tariffs on imported vehicles other than, and I'm talking about imported used stock, and you just outlaw it other than collectibles. But it is massive, and you need the will, because very difficult for a government where people desperately need transport to now cut off supply of that massive number of cars at very good prices. But they're dangerous. They're not built for the roads that they travel on. There's a huge human cost to saving some money up in the continent, and it will take a lot of work, but the whole idea is that South Africa can lead that. We did it. We learned how to do it with all those problems, and there just needs to be the political will and a long-term view.
If I can maybe just latch on to what Brandon has mentioned, those specific vehicles we cannot repair. I've seen it in sub-Saharan Africa, where in order to try and get their workshop loading up, they physically take them into the vehicle, into the workshop, and you cannot find parts for them. So they get stuck. There are no parts to support these specific vehicles.
Yeah, David, I think what they've got to do is similar to what we've got here in South Africa. The legislation doesn't permit the importation of second-hand motor vehicles because of the reasons that Brandon and Freddie have indicated. The only second-hand vehicles that can come into South Africa are maybe special purpose vehicles that you cannot get, but then you've got to go through a whole application and get permit. Unfortunately, the countries around us are issuing these type of permits, and they need to actually come to an agreement that they're going to stop that, because all they're doing is getting dumping taking place, and they should implement this type of legislation and anti-dumping tariffs. And I think that will resolve the problem within Africa.
I wonder if I can say something here. Is just yesterday, we had a problem with an imported car. I can't remember the brand, I'm sorry. We requested quotations from about 5 or 6 insurance companies. We weren't able to insure this car for the reason that if something happens to this car, it's going to be a write-off, because there's no parts, there's no crash parts available in the country. So that makes it very expensive for an insurance company to insure this vehicle, because it's going to be a definite write-off if something small happens to this vehicle. So it is something to consider as well if you do think about importing a second-hand vehicle somehow.
That's such a very good point. Thanks, Martin. Yes, Russell?
Sorry, David, I just want to jump in, and I want to come from a different angle. Should it not be the responsibility of South Africa to protect its market? What I'm saying is, if you look at Toyota, Nissan, BMW, Ford, those guys have got major manufacturing concerns, setups in this country, which is obviously labor, gives or contributes to our labor force. These cheap imports that are coming in, or let's not call them cheap imports, let's just call them Chinese. These vehicles are manufactured overseas. They're being brought in lock, stock and barrel as a fixed unit. And there is no real labor opportunity for our workforce, except for the guys that are working in dealerships. Should we not actually be protecting our market by I mean, you were saying like 17, over a 6-month period, 17 new brands came in. That's a big chunk. And yes, we are spoiled for choice. So I want to just, before I end off, I was in Germany in December for quite a period. And because I'm a motor fan, I'm an F1 fan, I'm a real petrol head. I grew up in a motor racing family. I'm observant of motor vehicles. Plus, I've got a freaking ego, so I like good-looking motor vehicles, the AMGs of the world and that type of stuff. So these vehicles attract my attention. In Germany, the funny thing that I saw was the only brand that was external from the German brands, VW, Porsche, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, was Skoda. And Skoda and a couple of others, which is your Czechoslovakian coming from the Czech republics, were, I would say, a minor percentage of those vehicles. So listening to this discussion that we're having, I reflected back on that. I'm thinking, so Germany is doing something to protect their market. Yes, I believe in open trade, and I think it's great that everybody's got opportunity to buy and sell, but it cannot be to the detriment of the foundation of what your economy exists on. A part of my scope is I'm a director of a non-profit organization that looks at the development of root businesses in communities, believing that those communities is where our growth, our economical growth can stand and can grow from. That's the foundation. So that is where my mind is. And I'd just like to get your input, because it's all good to say, okay, well, import. And I know we've got a trade agreement with China. We're part of the whole, what we call it, BRICS. But is it not to the detriment, long-term detriment of our labor force?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things raised there, and you're definitely speaking the way Parliament was speaking. I think we got to place it all in context. So definitely manufacturing jobs are very important. Big industry is very important. But certain things also need to be understood in terms of the fact that all the OEMs manufacturing in the country, their primary market is outside of South Africa. So whether there's one brand, 10 brands, 1,000 brands, they're competing against all the other factories for exports. This is why Mercedes-Benz is so worried about AGOA and whether we stay in AGOA, because if we're out of AGOA, the South African market will never support that. They export C-Class to America. They lose America, they shut the factory. Whether we protect and we stop imports coming into the country, it won't help a single job there. And so we go. So the OEMs are more exporters and also sell cars in South Africa. Nissan obviously has sold to Chery, and Nissan will become a full importer. So that's the one thing. The other thing is the manufacturers, the 7 OEMs plus Stellantis are about 38,000 jobs, which is a lot of jobs in a country that doesn't have many jobs. If you add the tier 1 suppliers for parts, you're looking at about 108,000 jobs. The dealer side of the market, you're looking at 300,000 jobs. So do you protect 30,000 jobs to put 300,000 at risk? These are the things that government needs to grapple with. The other big thing, and this is the biggest worry, protectionism in one way is good to preserve certain things, but where we are as an economic reality now without public transport and things like that is the cars that are being imported mainly by the Chinese are in the market that consumer can afford. And other than the entry-level Toyota Vitz and little thing like that, there is nothing really in the 7 manufacturers that can fill that market. And the factory's not geared for it, maybe Polo as well. But so what would happen is if you stop the imports coming in, you can't replace it with local cars. So yes, you may protect jobs, but there won't be the volume to fill the space, so you'll lose those jobs anyway. And the next problem would obviously be the prices would increase massively for consumers. It would take a lot of people out of the market who currently need those vehicles to become economically active. And now you're affecting real jobs across multiple economies. So it's a very, very difficult area to manage. How we protect our manufacturers actually by creating a space for better exports. And that's why the presidency trying to fix Eskom so that you can power those plants, fix Transnet so you can get those cars to ports to export them, fix rail, fix this, fix that, to move the cars out of South Africa. That's where we'll massively create the jobs. But yes, they must look at all of this, and that's what Gary was saying. The master plan needs to move away from pure industrialization to actual real job creation and job sustainability. And a huge factory is great, but it can be shut overnight if they lose a big contract, like Merck in America. 30 mini workshops plus another 20 dealers plus another panel repairer. That's where I think we'll grow this economy much more. But it is a debate that will never ever stop, and we will hear it for eternity of which is the better route to take.
Yeah, just adding to what Brandon said, the discussion at Parliament, and that's why the RMI was at Parliament on Monday, is because the South African master plan only looks at one element of the industry. It really looks around the manufacturing of the plants in South Africa and the component manufacturers that feed them. It doesn't incorporate the retail and whole aftermarket sector of the industry, and that's what we went to Parliament and saying, here's an opportunity to include that into policy, because it doesn't sit in automotive policy in South Africa. So the government's actually got to look at the broader value chain from manufacturing to grave and come up with a policy that covers all those sectors. And then we most probably have a more cohesive scenario, and this will most probably maybe create opportunities for the local manufacturers, and it will maybe put all the imports and everything into balance.
If I can maybe just say, I think the market opens up consumers that might never have bought a new vehicle. So from my point of view, when Andre and I went to look at the vehicles, we bought two because the price was right and it met the comfort. We probably would never have bought the vehicles if the price wasn't right. So it happened if the price wasn't right.
Mm-hmm.
If I can maybe just latch onto that, although the market is growing, what we find is due to urbanization and youngsters, people working from home, private ownership actually shows a little bit of a decline. Now that brings me back to what Brandon said earlier. As long as it's an affordable, we've got affordable vehicles, whether it's imported or whether it's locally produced, then there will be a higher uptake, especially from your younger generation that's not currently using public transport instead of buying an actual vehicle. So that's where the initially, and I fully agree with what Brandon is saying. And wasn't that your experience as well, Mana? You bought because of what you pay and what you got, right? And what your actual needs were.
Absolutely. It met the needs I had at that moment.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Now, this has been a very interesting conversation, and there's so many aspects here that we still need to look at. One of the things that obviously, these new vehicles need to be repaired. They need to have maintenance done to them, etc. And obviously, that's also going to create, new jobs, perhaps, because with different brands, you need different skills. I assume that some of these vehicles, if you work on one type of car, with the new technology, etc., perhaps you can't work on another car. Does that create itself more employment opportunities out there for mechanics and for people doing the repairs, etc.? Freddie, Gary, Brandon?
David, with the influx of new energy vehicles into South Africa, there's a whole scenario where you've got to create new qualifications for people working on EVs, etc. Through the RMI, we're busy looking at a qualification there. Those are the type of things that are going to create other opportunities. It's not only creating opportunities for new skills there, the existing artisans in South Africa, we're getting a shortage of artisans. We need to find new artisans. And what we've also got to do, because of the age of the existing artisan pool, which is most probably in the 50s of age, and you're not attracting younger people into the industry, we're going to have to start upskilling these people from being the normal ICE vehicle technician to being able also to do the new energy vehicles. But we need to attract, and maybe Brandon can give a little bit of background about what NARD is going to be doing shortly around trying to expose the younger generation to the opportunities and the job opportunities in the automotive industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird world that we work in. We're in a country with very limited job opportunities, extremely high unemployment, especially for the under 25s. And yet in our industry, especially on the retail side of it, we are desperately lacking in human beings to come fill positions. There are going to be, and there is a growing number of thousands and thousands and thousands of job opportunities for workshops, and we cannot attract. People don't want to work the manual stuff anymore. They don't want to be an artisan. They see it as something that if you can't get a real job or go to university, you become an artisan. And I think something we need to learn from Germany, especially, and why they are so good at what they do, is that they make artisans something that you aspire to. You want to be the guy who works on that Audi. You want to put your lab coat on, plug your laptop in, and see what you can diagnose and fix that vehicle. And we've got to change that whole thinking here in artisan development on attraction, retention, and upskilling. And so we're going to be launching with NADA Motoring Mavericks. And the exact thing, we're going to try and teach youngsters from school level how cool this industry is, what it means. It's not a secondary thing. Working on a vehicle can get you to Formula One. You can be a pit crew. That's obviously like being a CEO on a normal world. That's very cool stuff. But it really is more laptops and lab coats instead of overalls and grease. And that's the big thing. And there are, David, so many opportunities there. It is in the thousands and growing. Gary's right. The average is in the 50s for artisans in this country, which means every year thousands more fall off. Plus, very young ones, Dubai is taking thousands of artisans every single month from us. Where I work, we have a massive technical training academy, and most of the graduates, we don't even get a chance to offer them a job. They go straight onto a plane and overseas because the world needs artisans. So it is something where we can grow employment, we can grow mobility. It is such a positive thing, but we've just got to convince people to want to take a look. And it sounds so weird when people are desperate for jobs, and we have them. But that is life. We just got to create the nexus.
Sure. So there's actually light at the end of the tunnel. Please,
can I quickly say something? I think we as parents should take that responsibility as well. Because how often do we want our children to be lawyers and doctors and all these professional positions? But if you think about an artisan, somebody who can work with their hands, they will never have to go hungry. They don't have to really work for a boss. They can survive out there. I've got a couple of lawyer friends who battle. They really battle financially because, AI has taken over how to write a contract. You don't need to pay a lawyer anymore to do that for you. So if you think about it, the responsibility is ours as parents, to teach our children that you need to be self-sufficient in a way. If you can work with your hands, really, you don't have to go hungry, ever.
Yes, I just want to say this, sorry. When Brandon mentioned that, I thought back on, I was a lecturer at Pretoria West Technical College many years ago, and I remember that rector there, he said, all the guys must wear a tie. You are smart. You are smart when you do technical, when you study technical, professional, whatever things. You are a professional. So we must really get that mindset right again, because there's great opportunities and it's a smart job. Nowadays, as you've mentioned, it's not grease and mechanic, dirty little guy, whatever, oil on the hands. It's technical. You are an engineer, actually. So it's incredible. I'm excited about what can happen in future. Sorry, Russell.
Yeah, no problem. Brandon, my time is going to be limited when we finish. So with your permission, I want to ask Freddie to share your details with me. I'm busy with a project in Soshanguve, where they are developing artisans. But what they're doing is they're using kids from special needs schools, guys that don't have matrics, that can't get a job in government or anywhere else. It's really a great project, and I want to maybe have a cup of coffee with you and just tell you what it's all about, because I think it goes hand in hand with what you're saying. 100% agree with you. If you look at something like a plumber, for example, in Europe, electrician in Europe, these guys are seen as fundamental elements within the economy. It's not like, oh, I'm a plumber, it's a shameful job type of thing. And the same with the motor mechanic or an artisan. So I'd really like to have a cup of coffee with you and discuss this project, because I think it will fit hand in hand with what you guys are wanting to do. And it is a black and white. It's a black and white project.
No
definitely fill the gap. Okay. Thanks. Sorry, David, but I just don't want to lose this opportunity to have a discussion with you guys.
No. Well, we're all going to contact each other after this anyway. But the thing that I'd like to do now, the timing is we've actually run all over our time. But I'd like to just go around the room and ask each of you for what is your major takeaway that you've taken from this conversation, and how can you take it forward to actually do something positive with it? So I'm going to start with the co-hosts, and then I'm going to go through and end with Gary and Brandon and Freddie. So let's start with Mana. Mana, what is your big takeaway from today's conversation?
I think with every negative thing that happened in our country, economy-wise, is that we need to not look at the problem, but rather look at the opportunities available in this changing market. There are so many opportunities. New jobs can be created, but let's see the opportunities out there rather than the problem we have.
Thank you, Mana. Let's go to Glenn. Glenn, what is your big takeaway from today's discussion?
Thanks, David. I've actually been quite quiet, but it's been a very interesting conversation. Just a quick thing. Gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong, but Cherry came in 2008 into South Africa, not so?
Originally, yes. Originally.
Yes. Correct. At that point in time, I was actually in the market for a car. And when I saw that, my immediate reaction and perception was, I don't want to touch this thing with a 10-foot barge pole because I won't have parts. I'll have a problem in terms of after-sales service, things like that. So a lot has got to do with perception. At the same time, I'm a BMW fan, bottom line. I don't drive one now, but I'm a BMW fan. And there's something that crossed my mind, because, again, I've just recently bought a second-hand vehicle. And something that crossed my mind was simply this. If a salesperson had actually made contact with me and said, listen, we've got some cars available. I know that you've bought this in the past, that type of thing. I would have been there like a shot. I wouldn't even have looked at anything else. And I think, once again, it comes down to relationships, building relationships in terms of the salespeople in the dealerships. Very, very important. So irrespective of the fact that Chinese products are coming in like fast and furious, great prices, I agree with everything. But I still maintain it goes down to relationships and building that relationship with the people. So, but that's my take. But thanks, gentlemen. It's been really interesting. Really great. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Let's go to Wilhelm. Wilhelm, what is your big takeaway from today?
Well, I can just say I'm quite excited about this thing. It's a very, very... I can't wait for young people to get into this, to become technicians, to do this thing. And I think the important thing is to focus on what we want again. What do we want? And then do the things we need to do to make this industry great and to provide jobs and all those wonderful things. Thank you.
Fantastic, Wilhelm. Russell, what is your big takeaway from today's discussion?
I think the discussion feeds into who I am. I love this country. I think we've got the most beautiful country. We've got beautiful people in this country. We are tenacious as South Africans. And yes, we've got such a diverse complex of people, the boer market plan type of attitude. I love that. I love the fact that, although in certain spaces color is still an issue, but in most places it's not an issue anymore. Being part of a school program, I love the interaction on the rugby field between rugby players, not players of color. I believe in this country, and when I hear that you guys have gone to Parliament and that there's a action plan that's been in process to safeguard the market and to look after the I think, a vital segment of our economy. It excites me that Parliament is actually listening, and I do believe that it's just a question of time when we're going to have the real turnaround in this country, and South Africa will become the giant it's meant to be and what it used to be. In my lifetime, I remember when you had to pay $2 for a rand, and it was £2.50 for a rand. There's no reason we can't go back to that. I think it is people like yourselves, and I think a lot of us that believe in this country, that can take it back there. So it excites me to still be young enough to be able to partake in it. That's why I do what I do. So I think my big takeaway is I'm just excited that government is actually looking at it and listening to what the market specialists like yourselves are saying. Thanks.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you. Let's go to Brandon. Brandon, what is your big takeaway, and what advice can you give us going forward in the audience?
Yeah, I think so my first big takeaway is exactly as Russell said. We're a tenacious bunch, and we make a plan. Even me trying to just get back onto this webcast on my phone, after a laptop, 2 internet connections, and a phone connection broke. But we make a plan and we make it work, and that's South Africa. And I think the wonderful thing about this, the main takeaway that I had from this webcast, is we started with a topic: China is reshaping the motor industry. And within 45 minutes, we moved on to Africa, artisans, technicians, and job opportunities. And I think that's exactly what it is. Nothing can be seen in isolation. Not one thing is going to move the needle. And although my legal background says never give advice, but my experience says that, the internet is a wonderful place to do research the stuff, have an open mind, look at what you want, what you can afford. I do drive a 2.5 liter diesel bakkie. And there aren't other options at the moment in that. But my wife just yesterday bought a Korean car. So you just look at what shapes what you want. And I think that's the best thing. There's so much out there. Kick a tire, test drive a car, use a lot of things, and you'll find the right thing. And I think there is so much opportunity no matter what. And I think that's what all the speakers are talking to. So yeah, that was my big takeaway.
Thank you. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate that. Let's go to Gary. Gary, what is your big takeaway for today and your advice that you give to the listeners?
I think my big takeaway is, and I think it's gone through the conversation, is that we need to sort of work our way through the clutter that's out there, the lot of disinformation, and focus on the true facts, do our research, as Brandon said, through the internet. And then the other thing is face-to-face conversations between people. And I saw that again in Parliament, where we had, the 5 CEOs, the big motor manufacturers there, we had government there, we had ourselves from the aftermarket and retail sector, we had the unions there, and people were talking face-to-face and not through cameras and that. And there was more, I think, connection between the people, and understanding, because you can read body language, you can read nuances and that. So I'm saying, go out there, speak to people, listen carefully, and disregard the disinformation there. And I think, as Russell said, this is a beautiful country and it can be great again.
Absolutely. Love that. Thanks so much, Gary. Wonderful. Freddie, you can wrap up for us.
It was quite interesting, and my takeaway is, and it very much links to what the rest of you say, is we need to get new blood into the industry with regards, and we need to upskill our staff, whether it's on sales, whether it's on after sales, it doesn't matter. We can actually grow it into sub-Saharan Africa. We already export to some of those countries. If you just look at Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, all of those gets exported to on some of the brands. Already have a footprint. So yes, I think there are opportunities, but it needs to have a focused approach, and hopefully through what Brandon and Gary's experience are, we will have a way forward, and we will be able to actually grow the market with the right expertise on board.
Oh, thank you, Freddie. Absolutely. I'd also like to just thank all the listeners who've been listening in. There are a number of questions that have come through, and I'm going to ask Freddie and Brandon and Gary to actually go through and answer these on the WhatsApp groups, on the YouTube groups, on the Facebook groups, on the LinkedIn groups. And I'd just like to thank you all for actually doing that. Hello, Rodney. Thank you, Paula. Let's see, Rodney Woodsit, another one. And there are quite a few questions there. So I'm going to ask if you guys could do that because of time. But next week we'll be back. We're going to be talking about something in the agricultural space that's really important for the farmers and for the economy. So please come and join us next week. And again, thank you to Freddie, Gary, and Brandon for being here today. Thank you so much. And then to our co-hosts for the insights and their input. Thanks, Mana. Thanks, Russell. Thanks, Wilhelm. Thanks, Glenn. And we'll all see you next week. So blessings to you all. Have a fantastic week and take care. Cheerio. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye now. Bye now.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.